I'm really a big believer in the fact that you can't really prescribe marketing. Marketing is, I almost look at it as you're a doctor when you go into a business because it's so different in so many different ways. Mm-hmm. And so you have to kind of look at all the symptoms of that organization and then diagnose the disease, and that disease is what you treat.
Welcome to Tiny Marketing. Today I am talking to Nathan Yeung, the founder of Find Your Audience, and we are going to be talking about how to integrate marketing and sales. As we've talked about so many times on this show, marketing and sales are often at each other's throats, but that doesn't need to be the case. It really doesn't. In the end, our goal is the same. Our goal is to sell. Our goal is to make money for the business. So it's really kind of detrimental to the business as a whole when marketing and sales can't get along. Today, we're going to be talking about how you can amplify your revenue and uncover the secrets of successful marketing and sales integration. So get pumped, get ready, and stay tuned to be a fly on the wall with my conversation with Nathan.
My name's Nathan Yeung. I run a firm called Find Your Audience. We've been in business for about 7 years, but really I'm a fractional CMO across multiple industries, like everything from IT recruiting, professional services, private equity, Series A companies, B2B SaaS, and really have just been marketing for almost for my actual lifetime, probably 15 years. So lots of marketing experiences and someone who enjoys being really hands-on. So tactically proficient in every part of marketing. So I've been definitely a person who's a lifelong learner in marketing.
A proud generalist.
Proud generalist. No, I have some specialties. I'm definitely a specialist in SEO. So I'm a generalist, but I definitely have high affinities in certain tactical areas.
Yeah, that makes sense. I would consider myself a generalist too, but I focus more on content marketing than anything else.
Amazing.
So I want to talk deeply into sales and marketing, the blending of it. But first, how did you come up with your name, the Find Your Audience? What's the origin story if you were a superhero?
The origin story is funny because there's 3 guys that started it, myself, Paul, and Ray, and we were all media buyers. So we were all kind of just doing super affiliate stuff on the side, and we're just let's just start an agency called Find Your Audience, because that's all we do. We find people online and we serve them ads and we hope for them to click. And that was kind of the origins. And,
okay.
and honestly, our name kind of plays for us and also against us. It plays for us because it's Find Your Audience online, which is literally a sentence. And then for everyone who writes our emails, they hate us because it's incredibly long. So it's just been a long time coming for us to think about maybe even changing names, but that's really where it came from. We were all media buyers and we thought, hey, we help people find their audience. That's literally what we do. So let's just call it that.
Well, that makes sense. So that media buying was your origin. Do you still do that?
We do it to a much more limited expense. For anyone who's ever done media arbitrage, you're cash flowing $60, $70, $80, $90,000 a month easily on your bills. Yeah.
That makes me nervous.
Yeah. And it's a little bit different from our B2B clients. We do a lot of real estate launches. So we're spending $100,000 at a time, but that's on a contract, and we get paid for that. And I can touch and feel those people. I can see them in person. When I'm spending $90,000 credit card bills for someone overseas on an overseas offer, you have no idea when or how you're going to get paid. And so we stopped that because it's incredibly great money. So for those that are listening, you make tons of money, but it's so stressful. You have no idea if they will renege on your offer, right? They can go, I'm paying you $5 a lead. Oh, we're going to give you 3. We're going to give you 2.5. Oh, we're going to cut half your leads. So it's not for the faint of heart, I'll say that much.
Yeah. And my heart feels faint right now hearing those numbers.
Yeah, I think the most we ever had on a credit card bill in 1 month was like 230,000 USD.
Oh,
Yeah, and us Canadians, that's like 30% more. So that's like 300 grand Canadian.
oh my God. So I feel like you're speaking from experience that people have backed away and haven't paid those.
There's the dark side of affiliate marketing, which, maybe I'll get a lot of hate on if anyone's listening, but there are things called scrubbing, and scrubbing is a very common tactic. It is something that's baked into every affiliate network's model, and it's really just a part of their margin. So if you're a part of the affiliate network and you send 100 leads, their platform naturally has a mechanism that says scrub 5 to 10% of those leads. And they do that for two reasons. One, they're also representing the offer on a primary relationship perspective, and sometimes those primary people scrub them. So essentially that 5 to 10% is a buffer for them in case that you do send bad leads. But then at the same time, if you don't send bad leads, they just keep that buffer, right? So they essentially make a free 10% on your lead. So yeah, it's a very common practice.
Oh my gosh. I am not part of that world at all. So that's completely new to me.
It is heart-wrenching. It causes a lot of stress.
Yeah, I imagine. Well, we've really rabbit holed nice and good on that topic, but we are focusing on being a fractional CMO. And one thing that you do is build marketing departments from scratch. Can you tell me about your process?
It really depends on the organization. I'm really a big believer in the fact that you can't really prescribe marketing. Marketing is, I almost look at it as you're a doctor when you go into a business, because it's so different in so many different ways. Mm-hmm. And so you have to kind of look at all the symptoms of that organization and then diagnose the disease, and that disease is what you treat. And so I think the way we build teams is really dependent on the maturity of the industry, the maturity of the organization, the maturity of the human resources, and then taking that and then applying it against the constraints. So what's your human capital constraints? What's our monetary constraints? And then trying to figure out, okay, well, if this is our world and this is our box, what are the biggest and most impactful things we can do? And the funny thing that I always bring up, because I feel like everyone talks about it, it's let's do TikTok, let's do Reels. And I always look at the organization and I go, your entire organization is the average age of 35 and mostly male. So the likelihood of you having some young, spry content creator in your team is very unlikely. So I'm glad that you are watching TikTok, and I'm glad that your kids are watching TikTok and you feel very influenced, but you have zero probability on executing on this tactic very well. So
you have to give some hard truths occasionally.
Yeah. And so I'm look, I totally, if you were a Gen Z company that was bootstrapped, there's a probability that one of your younger employees could probably just do it on a whim. But some organizations just aren't equipped for that. And so I really have to tell them, look, you got to focus on what you can do. And then you have to double down on those things, because it's better than trying to really honestly chase shiny objects.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this goes into a little bit of what I do when I'm building out a strategy at the end, is figuring out, well, what can you actually do in-house with the team and the budget that you already have? And then looking at the customer avatar first, who do you want to clone? And try and replicating that journey for them. People feel like they have to be everywhere and show up on all platforms, but you really don't have to.
Absolutely. And the other thing as well, I always go when you're constrained, we did a study, and there's lots of studies out there that say the amount of frequency that you have to show an ad is anywhere between 9 to 14, somewhere around there. Our studies showed that it was 30 and above.
That one person has to see it to be influenced? Wow.
Yeah, before you actually really start remembering something. And that kind of brings everything in full circle to one sort of point of truth. The point of truth is that if you don't have a lot of money, and you don't have a lot of time, and you don't have a lot of resources, you really have to get that one impression and do it really, 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 really well, because that might be the only time you can afford it.
Right.
So if you do a really bad TikTok reel and you're lucky enough to land on that CEO whose kid's watching it, you end up showing up in their feed and your TikTok looks like it's amateur hour and just like terrible, you've lost that lead and you're never going to get them back. So it goes back to this whole idea that is, the more constrained you are, the more you're likely needing to focus on either an amazing creative or amazing execution, because you're not really going to have the power or the money to do something consistently. And so therefore it's even more important. So you can't spread yourself thin, because then you're just not doing yourself any favors.
Yeah. You have a whole bunch of trash out all over the internet instead of. So we're focusing on quality over quantity is what I'm hearing.
100%. 100%. And bizarre, don't be scared to be bizarre. I think so many companies are so scared of being a little quirky to have some humor, right? And like, if anyone's watched Ryan Reynolds recently, everything he does is quirky, and there's a reason for that. And he's made more money than you probably have if you're listening to this podcast. If you think Ryan Reynolds is stupid or he hasn't done well, I can tell you he's made $50 million companies into $200 million companies. Why? Because he's made amazing storytelling kind of journeys, and he's made them quirky. And when they're quirky, you remember. And so he's got both distribution and the quirkiness going for him.
Yeah, he's a really good example too of like taking your personality and owning it, and you become known for that thing, and that can be your differentiator. He has been like exactly the same since like Van Wilder days.
Yeah. The only thing we were just talking about was like Amityville Horror. I think that was like
that was a blur.
He was like very serious.
I remember seeing that in the theater. I'm like, it's not very Van Wilder of him.
No, yeah, I know.
Okay, let's go back to building that marketing team from scratch. It sounds like you first focus on the team that they have in-house. And then how do you decide who to bring on, or if they're going to be fractional or in-house?
We really, again, just look at that budget and look at what they need. It's really down to their ideal customer profiles and really understanding like where those customers are, right? Like where's the audience? Find your audience, right? Are they on LinkedIn? Are they in conferences? A great example I gave in another podcast was I was talking about the cybersecurity space and like how most chief security officers or like information officers or CTOs, when it comes to cybersecurity, they like uniquely hate like anything digital, because if you think about it, like their whole job is to stop phishing. So
they don't trust it. They don't trust it.
Yeah. So can you imagine being like a marketing guy and just be like, hey, like, would you like to come on a demo? It's like they don't like it. And so predominantly, like a lot of that is corporate event marketing. So a lot of cybersecurity companies really actually need to go to conferences, or they have to be very creative in terms of getting in front of people. So really looking into those industries, really looking at those ideal customer profiles, and just being honest on like, where are these people? And then really looking at the organization and then saying, okay, what can we do to get into those channels well? So God forbid you're in a 40 plus age organization and the only channel that their customers are on TikTok, then they're going to have to hire. They're going to either have to hire like an agency or like a freelancer to be a content creator. And they're going to have to go on to TikTok and really be active there. So it's really matching those two. And then we kind of figure out where those resource gaps are.
They could also seek out people who are already creators on TikTok and create like a brand deal with them.
Yeah. User generated content is king, especially when it comes to e-commerce. And so, even in real estate, actually on a real estate agent perspective, I always recommend doing UGC for developers. So I think if you have the capacity and you have the coordination capability, really going out into that market and generating that content with like actual content creators is an amazing tool for a variety of different reasons.
Yeah, people trust it more. For anybody who's listening and doesn't know what UGC is, it's user generated content. So you're
king of acronyms.
Just in case anyone listening doesn't know what that is. So I wanted to loop back around to what you were saying about security, because I just have a funny little connection with that. I just finished a strategy and their core customer was CIOs, Chief Innovation Officers. But I found the same thing, that when I was interviewing their customers, they never talked anything about anything digital. I was like trying to figure out where they find their information, how they solve their problems. And it was always talking to their network, going to conferences, anything with innovation in the name, they were happy to go to. But it was all in-person stuff. So that's a funny connection.
Yeah. They're very, very serious people, and they take their job very seriously, and they don't like security breaches.
Yes. And if there's digital involved, there's a breach that's going to happen. Yeah. So in your intake form, you mentioned that marketing and sales should blend. I really want to dive into that. I agree with you. And as someone who is in corporate marketing for 10 years before I started my own thing, I know it's really hard to do that too. So I want your perspective on that. Well, here, you said that sales and marketing should blend into a CRO role. Can you explain that?
I think at the end of the day, every organization wants revenue. If you look at like the ICPs that talk about marketing, they all end up kind of in the same place. Why aren't we making more money? Mm-hmm. And two people generally get blamed for that. Marketing gets blamed because, quote unquote, no one knows us. Yeah. Or B, sales gets blamed, being like, why aren't you closing? And then it becomes this vicious cycle of like, well, it's because marketing's not bringing enough people. And then typically then marketing goes, well, we don't have enough money. And then the CEO goes, well, we don't have enough revenue, so you don't get budget. So then it's like a vicious cycle where basically
it really is.
Yeah,
you're explaining my life for 10 years.
Yeah. And so I think this problem started when digital marketing became a thing. And I think there was a large, massive movement, and even including myself in my earlier years of marketing, where I was like, oh my God, marketing is so measurable. Everyone should be in performance marketing. There's so much power in performance marketing. But that whole movement has pigeonholed the living Jesus of marketing people. And what I mean by pigeonholed is everyone that's a marketer nowadays gets pigeonholed into this, where's my inbound KPI framework that is typically including KPIs around MQLs. And I always go like, MQLs is kind of a meaningless number at the end of the day, because
marketing qualified leads, for anyone who doesn't know what that is.
Marketing qualified leads is a meaningless number because, first of all, it depends on how you define it. But just generally speaking, let's just say someone who fills a form. And then second of all, MQLs is not a number that drives revenue. SQLs are, which is sales qualified leads, which is, the people that actually turn into someone who's interested. And then, of course, the actual conversion of them closing. So sales qualified lead isn't even a sale. It's just the person who's interested, indicated interest. And then there's ultimately a sale. So I go, at the end of the day, this all leads back to revenue. And so why do we focus so much on this MQL number when there's so much of that journey that is not within the control of a marketing person?
Yeah.
And so, I find your audience, we really say we help amplify revenue. We're marketing functions that amplify revenue. And that means not only on an inbound perspective, which means we're helping get leads into the door on a top of funnel perspective, but also, riddle me this, if I doubled the productivity of your salesperson, because your salesperson's no longer wasting their time on a CRM automation, a customer relationship management tool like a HubSpot, and figuring that out, designing email campaigns that they shouldn't be.
No, they should not.
Trying to copyright when they're really just phone people, coordinating a conference of which they figured out last minute. Like, if we doubled the productivity, took all of those meaningless tasks away, and had your salespeople who are really technical solutions people who are great at understanding, going through discovery and providing solutions on a call, could that also amplify your revenue? And the answer is yes. So this idea that a marketing function goes in and they're only driven by MQLs is a fallacy, because there are organizations that are sales-led. And there's nothing wrong for a marketing function to go into a sales-led organization and double the productivity of sales, because it's a sales-led organization.
Yeah, I am 100% on board with you on that. And I kind of see that as like a secular help too when it comes to marketing and sales, because the salespeople are experts on the customer. So marketing can create so much better and more effective marketing with the support from sales. And if sales is working with like account-based sales, that where like construction companies typically are going after the same type of accounts, marketing can then create campaigns specifically for those accounts, and everybody is more effective.
And construction is a great example because I've talked to a very large construction company. They're like, we don't need marketing people come to us. I'm like, that's fair. But like, have you ever seen your salesperson try to organize a dinner? And out of curiosity, do you think they do a great job? Or do you think they just make a reservation? So I understand that salespeople and in certain industries, it's very inbound, it's very referral, and the touch points are very influenced by those touch points. But it doesn't mean you can't do a better job on things that they're really just not great at. So let marketing help them on that. Let marketing be a glorified assistant to them, but making sure that every experience, every touch point they have is going to be amazing with that customer.
Yeah. So my background in corporate was exactly what you're talking about. I have been working with like building product companies and construction companies for a long time. And that is how I support them is I work with them on account-based marketing. So I'm creating marketing that's specific for those accounts. I'm amplifying their reach. So when they're trying to connect with new people and network with them, they've already heard of us because of the marketing that I've done. And then all of those little things that they don't want to do, like, or that they shouldn't be doing, like the email campaigns, the events, those were all on me. But yeah, I think of marketing in those capacities where it's sales led as a support for them and an amplifier, like you said.
Yeah. And I think people really want to chase that golden egg where it's just like, well, marketing is this like inbound machine, this dream machine. And they really just forget like marketing can still be very much a support function, but it is a productivity function. And that productivity can be amplified. The more salespeople you have, the more useful this is. And we have implemented this in some organizations where we have cut the MQLs in half, but we have increased revenue. So does that mean I've done a piss poor job? Well, for some organizations, yeah. But the end of the day, it's about revenue. So if we can cut MQLs in half and we can increase top of line, then does it really matter? So that's why I think sales and marketing need to be a bit more aligned. And I think this idea of pigeonholing marketing people into MQLs and like these impressions and like all these stupid metrics that I like to call our amateur hour metrics. Why? Because you bring them up because you have no idea why they're valuable. Like some marketing guy has sold you on it, which is our job. But it just shows that some organizations are very much in the nascent level of their education when it comes to marketing. It's like they're very infant in the stage of growth.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing, if MQLs are getting cut in half and revenue is growing, then you are focusing on what higher quality leads and maybe supporting sales and up-leveling the packages that they're selling?
Higher quality leads, better sales packages, better nurturing campaigns, better cadences, more case studies, more enablement tools, so that the chances of them closing are higher, right? So yes, a salesperson is going to be amazing on educating and talking to a customer, making those customers feel heard. But those materials that we produce that are very specific to their pain points and demonstrating our benefits are really, really, really important. And I always say this, every business has category benefits, which is everything that every other company can provide. It's your job to prove which benefit you do the best at. And the only way you do that is through marketing materials and spending the time to produce great materials.
I'm reading Obviously Awesome right now, which is about positioning and messaging, but it talked exactly about that find what benefits you do better than anybody else and just talk about those. That is your thing.
And I think, again, that always goes back to this whole thing. You as a person are always constrained. As a business, you're constrained. So you have like limited, time frames and touch points to influence someone. And if you can't do it the best in that limited time frame, then you're really losing an opportunity. So when you're spread thin, you have bad case studies, you have bad web copy, you have a bad website, you have bad sales decks, and then you just lose opportunity. Whether at least, you can have an amazing sales deck, like a deck that just crushes it, hits every single pain point, has amazing infographics. And when someone's on the call, they're like, I have really no questions. Like you've really just answered everything. I totally understand. It's super simple. Like, where do I sign up? And I think, that's super important versus trying to do everything.
Yeah. So I'm hearing a lot about constraints and focusing in on certain things. So what are some marketing tactics that you would always put first that people should prioritize?
Ooh, that's a really good one. Sales decks and case studies, I think just right from the get-go. It's such a painful thing. And so many companies really avoid it. And companies also forget how long it takes to build those. So I think if you're an organization and you're stumbling right now, like really go back to the basics. Go figure out, again, like how are you proving your worth and trying to create as much material around that? Because those tools ultimately sell themselves. Those become a part of your product-led journey, product-led growth kind of model if you produce them well. And they're amazing tools for your salespeople. So I think really sales enablement tools, there's a lot of organizations that still have sales decks that aren't like institutionalized, meaning like templated to any extent. And there's a lot of organizations that are like off-brand because like the salespeople are doing all willy-nilly stuff on the side. And then there's often also a lot of organizations where none of the salespeople actually even know where their materials are.
Yes.
Right?
All of the things you're saying, I have experienced and seen too.
Product sheet? What product sheet? The product sheet we just launched last week. You were part of the launch. I didn't even know we had a product sheet. It's like, we launched the product. So I really think it sounds so simple, but you also have to think about focus on the opportunities you have. And so the reason why I say sales enablement tools are so important is if you're on a sales call, that's a massive opportunity for you. So if you can optimize the closing rates of your sales calls, that's a big win, right?
Yep.
So if you can double the percentage of that or even increase it by 10 to 15%, that's massive, right? And if you think about it, the most valuable to you, because it takes so much time and energy and money to get that person in the door. So a lot of people go, oh, well, they're already in the door. So you know what? Why would I focus on sales enablement tools? No, you're not looking at it properly. If you can increase the closing rate by 10 to 15%, what does that ultimately mean to your business? So if you really wanted to force feed this into an organization, you go, isn't that actually the most important right now? Right. And it usually is, or it's usually pretty close to being the top. So I think that's like a very easy direction for a lot of companies to go. SEO is something I always talk about because it's something that's very time oriented. So it's best to just start it early, even if it's honestly like half baked. Like it's fine. Start it because it takes time. And getting into just a calendar, for the love of God, just get into a calendar, people. Stop planning events next week. I tell a lot of companies, the reason why we work on a 90-day work back schedule is because when we're on a 90-day work back schedule, we're actually creating more marketing dollars. Because every time you do something last minute, not only do you do it worse, you also do it typically at a higher price. If you got to order goods 90 days, if you can order it 100 days, it's probably cheaper. If you could buy billboards 100 days earlier, it's cheaper. When you do all these things ahead of time, you actually create more marketing dollars. So people don't understand this concept, right? So I go I know a work back schedule sounds daunting, but what if I told you by doing a 90-day work back schedule, you get 30% on your marketing dollars? Like on a finance perspective, you're getting 30% return on your marketing dollars.
It's hard to say no to that.
And then also it allows you to have the opportunity to do last minute things. So imagine if you're 90 days out and you're like, wow, like we're pretty good. And then someone comes to you and be like, hey, we got a diamond sponsorship. The sponsor left. We thought of you guys. We'll give it to you guys 50%. You can jump onto that opportunity and crush it. And so now you have that flexibility to take in those opportunities and do it well. So I think a lot of people really underestimate why work back schedule adds so much value to an organization.
So we're focusing primarily here on mid-funnel to bottom of funnel. Yes, MQLs were cut in half, but those half that you did get, what are your favorite top of funnel strategies for that?
Top of funnel right now is really retargeting journeys. So for the non-fancy media buyers, you can split up your audiences based on the timeframes they've entered into the audience. And by doing that, you can actually sequence their retargeting so that it's a bit more storytelling. So for example, you can essentially create audiences between like 7 and let's just call it 7, 14, and 30 days. And then you can subtract those audience from one another. So essentially you're only getting the in-betweens, meaning you're only getting the 17-day audiences, then you're getting the 7 to 14-day audiences, and then you're getting the 14 to 30-day audiences. And when you do that, you can do storytelling, right? So now I can show a person my ad 4 or 5 times, and that's one part of my story. Then between the 7 to 14, you can show them another part of the story. And then at the 14 to 30, you can do another part of the story. Now you go, wow, that sounds amazing. Now the other thing is it is a pain to do.
It sounds intense.
Yeah, so this is why you pay. And I'm not saying you guys need to hire me. You guys can certainly learn this. But this shows you that this is why I'm very hard on digital like media buyers all the time. Because just for everyone that's listening, platforms are made for you to make it easy. But if you want to be good, you do stuff like I just talked about, where you're creating these audiences, you're creating these pockets of audiences based on days, and you're actually creating a storytelling, or you're retargeting on some kind of finicky level. I said on Facebook's really bad because they only do radius targeting, and sometimes you really want to pinpoint on a location. So for anyone that's listening that does this, you can do this manual process where you do the radius and then you do exclusion radiuses all the way around. So then you're actually smaller than the minimum amount. So usually the minimum amount is like 1 mile to 5 miles. So you can then do the exclusions, then you're like even less than 1 mile. So it's only this little tiny dot. So these manipulation tactics in media buying can really help you do top of funnel things and be like hyper targeted and like really take your dollar a long way.
I love that. So I'm working on a strategy right now, and part of it is hyper targeted advertising because we want to create demand gen for specific buildings. And now I know how to do that with Facebook.
And the other one that I would highly recommend is there are digital out-of-home networks, and there is 100% likely a digital out-of-home network that has elevator ads in those buildings. So I would recommend that you also look into that space because you could actually probably buy the elevator ad in that building.
Brilliant. That is brilliant. I'm actually having that call tomorrow and I'm adding that in. Oh, I love that. Thank you. You've given me so much good stuff in this interview.
Oh, I'm glad. That's my goal. Every host says, "What do you want to talk about?" I was like, "I don't care what I want to talk about. What do you want me to talk about for your audience? You tell me that."
Well, you delivered.
Well, I'm glad.
Is there anything else that you want to go over before we wrap up?
Dunning-Kruger effect. If you haven't looked that up, look that up. I can guarantee that's likely you. And it's this lovely little graph that shows that you are far more confident than you know. And then through time, you start realizing you're wrong. It's a beautiful graph because it probably explains half of it's like when a guy goes into like the furniture stores and tries to do the whole like build without looking at the instructions. It's the Dunning-Kruger effect. We go in there thinking, it's like, yeah, I know what I'm doing. And then you break it. And then you realize it's a lot harder than you think it is. But this like spans across everything. I'm doing a bunch of consumers. If you follow my channel, FYA.marketing bites, I talk about all these consumer research articles, and I stumbled across Dunning-Kruger effect, and it's hilarious because it literally explains like why most people feel the way and why most people think like they're marketers, because you start off at this peak where it's like, I know everything. And then through time, through research, you realize that curve dips really quickly.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've been in marketing for 15 years also, and there's so much I don't know. I stick to my thing, the thing I'm good at.
Yeah. So I recommend everyone, because I think you'll get a giggle when you look at the graph. It's hilarious.
Yeah, I need to look at that and then show my husband, who's right out there and has broken many IKEA furniture trying to put it together without directions.
Yeah. Oh, this is a little harder than I thought.
Yeah. I'll figure it out. It'll be fine. All right. How can everyone reach you? Can you say your website or your YouTube channel again and how they can work with you?
Yeah, awesome. So you can find me on LinkedIn at Nathan Yeung, spelled Yeung. I have an Instagram channel, which is fya.marketingbites with a Y. And then you can also find our agency website at www.findyouraudience.online. Contact me anywhere. Contact me on Instagram. If you want to go on TikTok, I'm also there with Marketing Bites. But realistically, you can find me on either Find Your Audience or Marketing Bites. And those are pretty searchable terms.
Sweet. And it'll be in the show notes. So you could just click on down below.
Yeah, clicking might be easier.
Probably. All right. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Sarah.
Bye. That wraps up another episode of the Tiny Marketing Show. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Nathan, where we talked all about how to integrate marketing and sales so your business can make more money, because that's our goal. We want to keep getting that salary. We need to make money, right? Right. All right. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate, review, subscribe. You could be listening to this or watching this, I don't know, wherever you happen to be. Take some action. All right. All of your reviews, your subscribes, your follows really mean so much to me. I joke, but it really, really does. And I'm constantly looking at my podcast analytics, like trying to do my best to support you, looking and seeing what topics really interest you. You matter to me more than you think. If you're watching this on YouTube, you have an opportunity to make a comment and tell me, what is it that you want to hear in future Tiny Marketing episodes? And last, if you are listening to this and you happen to live in the Chicago area, I have been hosting networking and walking sessions around town. So I'm going to drop a link to my meetup page in the show notes, and maybe we could hang out in real life and go for a little walk and talk. So look for that, and I'll see you next time. Bye, friends.